The reason why max reading level 0 is different is because it includes some books and subchapters that do not have text. And I know that, at least from my interaction with different schools and different teachers, a lot of students end up being assigned to level 0, either because they take the placement and that's where they get to, or because you determine that that's where they need to start. So level 0, which is equivalent to kindergarten, will offer the students different types of exercises. The first type of exercise that they might encounter is those chapters where they just see pictures. What usually happens is that students click on a chapter, look at the picture, and move on to the questions. That's not what we want for them to do. We want them to actually pause at the picture and do an exercise called visualizing and verbalizing. That is what the focus of our webinar will be today. It's probably going to be a shorter webinar than that we're used to, because it's quite a simple strategy, but it is important to know it, because it is important that the students also understand, whether they're working with you or a parent or a tutor, or they're working independently, what it is that they're supposed to do when they see a picture. So I'm going to go ahead and move my screen to the dashboard. So what I did here is I logged into my account and I went into the material section. I'm going to click on max reading. And as usual, there's a few documents there. The two that I'm specifically interested in right now are the two that are towards the bottom of my screen that have to do with this visualizing and verbalizing exercise. One of them is general instructions. I'll open it here on the side so you see what it looks like. It's just a few pages of instructions. And the other one is the structure words. It's all going to start making sense as I explain to you what the visualizing and verbalizing is. So I want to show you what one of those pictures look like for the students on max reading. So I'll go to my max. I'll go to max reading. Remember, as a teacher, you have access to all the levels. 0 is the one that I'm interested in right now. Although the visualizing and verbalizing is not only done with pictures, we started off with pictures, but it can also be done with words, with sentences, with paragraphs, with an entire page of text. But we started off with pictures on level 0. On the books Prep 1 and Prep 2, all of the chapters there will be pictures. I'll just use a couple of examples, but the strategy is the same regardless, of course, of which specific pictures I choose. I'll go ahead and do the first one that I always use, and then we'll use another example. That's treasure. So usually a student gets to Prep 1, chooses treasure, sees the picture, clicks on go to questions. But we actually want them to stop at this screen. And this is where I do the visualizing and verbalizing, where I have the picture in front of me. In just a very basic type of explanation of what is the visualizing and verbalizing is an exercise where we want the students to create a picture or a movie in their head of what they're seeing, a picture, or what they're reading eventually when they get to text. And the way that we do that visualizing and verbalizing exercise, or the way that we help them create that picture in their head, is by asking them questions. The questions are based on a series of words called structure words. Those are the words that I opened up from my material section. And I use those as prompts to ask certain things. I also have them on index cards. Same words. You can just, if you don't have a fancy one like me, just take index cards, a black Sharpie, and write the words, same thing. It's just easier for me to prompt like this. And if I don't want to use this word, I can just skip it. This is my deck of cards that I use as a prompt. So let's say that the first word that I'm working with is what. And this is the picture that I have. So I would think of questions with the word what that relate to that picture. So I could say what's going on, what is the kid doing, what are the parents doing in the background. Then I have the word where. Where do you think this is taking place? And then the student might tell me this is in a cave. And based on what the student says, I can come up with follow-up questions. I can expand on what is being said. But fact is that by using these structure words as prompt to ask them questions, they are visualizing, looking into the picture to see what they find, and then verbalizing the answers. So it's very important to have these words available. If your students are in these levels and they're working from home, just go ahead and email them the words so that they can make their own cards and kind of prompt themselves. In a usual case scenario, you would be in front of them, just flipping the cards and asking them the questions. But in this situation that we're faced with right now, you might want to just send them the words and for them to be on the computer looking at it and then just asking themselves questions as they flip through the cards. Let me take a second to see the things that have been written on the chat box. I'll read them out loud if you guys don't mind. Heidi says, I made cards for my students to use as they went through, but many of them can't read the words on the card. Do you have visuals that we could add to the cards? I was going to create them, but I didn't know if you already had that resource available. We don't, but if you just Google structure words or visualizing and verbalizing, you have some that have a visual to it. There's some that it's hard, like for sound, I could put a speaker and okay, that means sound. But there's some that it's hard to represent like that. For example, perspective, I don't know what visual I would put to represent that. So you might want to just introduce them to the word so that they're used to what the words are. Another thing on the chat, so we can do this offline as well, but where will we get the picture? Good question. Yes, you can definitely do this offline. If you still want to use the pictures that are on Max Reading, look on my screen, on my Max Scholar screen. You can see on the top right-hand corner, there's that little like chat box icon, and below it, the print button. When you hit print, usually you have this showing up, destination, and it says the name of a printer. But if you click on that, you can save as a PDF, and then the picture will be right there. So you can save the document and then email that. And then also you could print it out and then work from that at home. Or if you want to just find a picture elsewhere or in a book that you guys already use, you can also do the visualizing and verbalizing with literally anything in the world. If you want to use the Max Reading pictures, you can download them or print them out from the site. Next question, Corinne. Just joining, I was in another meeting. Where do I find the word cards? The word cards, it's, let me go back here to my dashboard, AKA your teacher site. You go to materials, you go to Max Reading, and you'll see the two documents that have to do with the visualizing and verbalizing. The structure words is the list of words. And the other file that says general instructions, we're about to go over it together so we understand the strategy a little bit better. That next question also has to do with the cards. All of them have to do with the cards. So what I did is I honestly don't know where I found this because I'm the only one that has it in this format. Before this, I just had index cards where I wrote the words. And again, if you want to use visuals, there's some words that you could easily associate a visual to. Some, it's not going to be that simple. Okay, so back to the treasure. In general, again, the idea is to ask the students questions, ask them follow-up questions based on what they're saying, kind of summarize things as they're visualizing and verbalizing so that you can create a story. That story becomes a movie in the student's head. And the reason why it's important is going to become clear to us in a second. I'm putting up here on my screen the second file regarding visualizing and verbalizing, the one that has the general instructions. This is what it looks like. What I did is I highlighted the important parts that I want you guys to pay attention to. So I'll go ahead and read those. Visualizing and retelling is the same thing as visualizing and verbalizing. You're verbalizing, you're retelling. So the strategy will really help students kind of internalize the information and also retrieve the information from their visual memory. Research shows that if a student cannot picture in their head what they're trying to say or what they're trying to understand, it's hard for them to process that information, much less remember it later on. So that's why we want to get them used to that process of taking mental pictures in a way. I'm exposed to information, what can I extract from it to create or transfer that picture into my head, that visual into my head? And then even if that visual is taken away from me, the picture is taken away, the text is taken away, I can still use that image that is in my head to retrieve that information. So I do recommend that you read the entire document that, again, I found on the materials of the dashboard. But the very important part that I want to cover with you is the things that are in yellow. So visualization is a critical factor in language and reading comprehension. Imaging, making an image, is the link to language and thought. If you think about it, that image and that thought and that language, they're always connected. You have to think of things before you say them, right? And when you're writing a paragraph, you have to think of it first. That's a sort of visualizing exercise as well. So initially we start with the pictures because it's the easiest, in a way, format to do so. You create a picture in your head from a picture on the screen or a picture in the paper. But then when you're able to also do that process with text, it really helps the student with processing, auditory processing, eventually comprehension, oral expression, oral comprehension. I need to make sentences before I read the sentences or before I write the sentences. So it's all really interconnected. Of course, in the brain, eventually it becomes automatic, but this is how we started, with the pictures and asking these questions back and forth. So I bypassed a few things in the text, and what I highlighted here, it's kind of what I just said. Words turn into pictures and pictures turn into words. It's like a loop of thought, image, language. That's what we're trying to do. So we use the words on the cards. I don't know if you can see my mouse moving. Yeah, circling where I'm reading. We're going to use the words in the cards to ask questions so that the student begins that visualizing and verbalizing exercise. So we want them to use words to tell us what they're seeing, to answer the questions that we're asking them. Once they do that process, I'm going to do a few examples. I have the picture. Let me zoom in. Okay. And by the way, side note that I didn't mention, you don't have to use all of the words. In fact, you might want to start with the very basic ones, what, when, where, all of those, and then add a little bit as you go. Some words may not even be applicable to the picture that you're working with at that time. So that's why I like having these in my hand, because I can read the word, see the picture, does it apply, yes or no, and then I skip if I don't want to use it. So the first word is what. My question would be, for example, what is going on in the picture? What can you see in this picture? That's a very broad question. So the student can tell me, I see a kid and I see the parents behind them. That's it. That's good enough. Now, if I take that picture away and I ask you what color was the kid's shirt, you probably don't remember. You might, but you probably don't. If I ask you how many people in total were in the picture, you might remember, you might not. If I ask you what items were in the treasure that the kid was opening, you might remember, you might not. But what we want to do is for the student to be able to recall all that information. How do we do it? By asking the question, by going deeper into that picture. It's not enough that I know that there's a kid and the parents. What else is going on? That's where the follow-up questions are going to come into place. So I'll move on to the next. Where? Where is this taking place? Like I said, a student might say, this is in a cave. I'll ask them, what makes you think that this is in a cave? And they can say maybe the color of what seem to be the walls, maybe the fact that it goes all around them. And as they're giving you answers, again, you can either repeat what they're saying or repeat and expand on what they're saying. Like, oh, I see that too. And I also noticed that there is something in the background. For example, there's another word, when. When do you think this is taking place? And the student might say, this is during the night. I don't believe that's right. I see sunlight coming in. So in that case, I would correct that visualization and say, oh, but I actually see sunlight coming through. So I believe that that's taking place during the day. And then you recap. So there's a kid with the parents inside a cave during the day. So you're building a story. You're gathering all of those details that they're telling you and making a story, AKA a movie. That's the movie that we're forming in their head as that visualizing and verbalizing exercise is being done. Now, you might not want to use this. You might want to use it. For example, the way, you don't need to use the exact word. You can just use, for example, how many people do you see in the picture? I didn't specifically ask for the word number, but the prompt is kind of the same. So I see 4 people. Sound. This is a tricky one because obviously a picture won't have sound, but it's all about, can you picture? That is always the underlying tone of the question. Can you picture these things? Can you picture any sound? Can you picture any movement? Also, a picture won't have movement, but can you picture it? Or what things that are happening in the picture could you imagine having movement? If I look at the picture, I can see the kid opened a treasure chest. So I can picture the movement of the kid looking at the treasure, running to it, putting his hands on it, and lifting the top of the treasure, for example. It's when you're visualizing and verbalizing, you're basing yourself off what you see on the picture, but it doesn't have to be things that only appear in the picture. The movement, I'm making it up in my head. I'm not seeing that movement. I'm making it up based on the fact that I see his hand is holding the top. So I imagine that there was a previous action of him taking the top and lifting it. Perspective. In this case, I don't want to use it. I'll just skip. Background. Don't want to use it. Not relevant to me right now. Shape. What shapes do you see? For this one, it's not so relevant. Mood. This is one that I like using with this picture. What can you tell me about the mood of the people in this picture? Or another way to use this as a question is, how do you think a person is feeling? How do you think the kid is feeling? Happy. What makes you think that he's happy? Well, 1, he found a treasure. 2, I see his smile, big eyes. He's excited. And then I can tell you what seems to be the mood of the parents in the background. Not so thrilled. They look scared or surprised or shocked. What makes you think that? The big eyes, raised eyebrows, but the mouths are not really showing smiles, right? So the idea is that, again, we use these words to pose a question. The student, color, this is one of the ones that I was asking before. We ask the questions, and then based on what they're telling us, we come up with follow-up questions. We summarize or build up those details that they're telling us about, so that at the end, we have a story that we created verbally based on what we saw. But as we did that process together of questions, answers, building the story, that became a movie in our head before we even knew it. So at this point, if I take away the picture, like I did now, and I ask you how many people were in the picture, you'll probably remember. If I ask you how the people in the picture were feeling, you'll probably remember. Because even if you don't have the picture in front of you, you're seeing the picture in your head. Think about it. If you close your eyes for a second, I'm sure you can see at least parts of the picture that we were just looking at, that we were just talking about. So that's what we want them to do. Create that picture so that when it's no longer in front of you, you're still able to recall information from it. Maybe not every single detail, but at least most details you will be able to remember. So at that point is where they would move on to the questions. the students, once they do that exercise, that's when they move on to the questions, and they have multiple choice type of questions, the usual. But that was just a quick example. Let's go back to the file that I was reading over. So we're going to be using our words to describe the picture. At one point, you can ask them to close their eyes, like I just said, and retell what they saw in the picture. So I close my eyes and I know that there's a kid that found a treasure and he was lifting the top of it, the cover, and the parents were surprised and shocked in the background. The sunlight was coming through. So I'm trying to remember as many details as I can from the picture that is in my head. I don't have the picture in front of me right now. And then at the bottom here, the last paragraph here of this page says the teacher summarizes what the student just says and gives feedback to the students on how well he or she visualized the image. So it's pretty much what I just demonstrated. Let's do the next page. And on the next few pages, what you have is how the visualizing and verbalizing can start being transferred, or being used with words as well. So first, if you see here, point number 3, we'll talk about max vocab or vocabulary words. There's words that are easy to visualize, some that are not so much, just like I was saying with the cards. If you want to attach a visual to it, some will be easy, some not so much. But let's say that we're talking about the word ocean. If you close your eyes and think of an ocean, what do you see? You see big water, waves splashing, blue, you see the sky in the background. So all those things, I don't see the ocean right now, but I have it in my mind. I have been able to see it at some point. I took a mental picture, and now every time that I think of the word ocean, I picture that in my head. I picture an ocean. So that is the idea. If you have any word, tree, what does a tree look like? So it has a trunk, it has leaves. During the fall, sometimes the leaves change colors. So all of those things are things that we visualize and verbalize at some point in our lives, and they're just in our memory. They became automatic. When I think of a tree, I see a tree. When I think of the ocean, I see an ocean. I don't need to ask myself the questions. I already did it. So that's how we can also use the strategy for words. Again, it's not that if I'm talking about the word government, for example, I can visualize and verbalize from that. Maybe next time that I think of the word government, it's not that I'm going to have a picture in my head pop up, but the information that I talked about will be there. So again, it's just an exercise that we expose the student to something, a picture, a word, a sentence, a text. And we want them to visualize and verbalize so that the information sticks in their head. How long it's going to stick, how much they're going to use it, depends. Tree, I use always. Ocean, I use always. There's some things like the treasure picture, I'm not going to need it for much longer. But again, the exercise is to make that information more easily retrievable in my head. Because if I have the visual, I can just take it from there. Then we move to step 4, which would be the visualizing sentence by sentence. So when we get to, for example, let me go back to max reading. Okay, and we go to level 0. As you know, prep 1 and prep 2, it's just the pictures and the questions. But then from prep 3 and on, we do have text. So if I do blue car, I have this short text and I can do sentence by sentence. Bob has a new car, it is blue, it goes very fast. So if I try to picture Bob having a new car, what does it look like? He's sitting in the car, he's very happy because he just got a new car and he's driving down the street. That's what I think when I think of the sentence, Bob has a new car. Then we have it is blue. So I add that to my previous sentence. Remember, I keep adding to what the student says or what I'm visualizing and verbalizing. So Bob is in the car, he's sitting in the driver's seat, he's very happy because he just got the car, he's rolling down the street and the car is blue. And that's how you can add things as you go through the sentences. Eventually, this will become paragraphs, entire stories, etc. So again, the goal is for the student to create that picture, create that movie in their head, and add to that movie, to that picture, so that every question that I ask, every sentence that I say about it, that picture becomes more and more and more clear. Then on step number 5, when you have the students work with text, doing the visualizing and verbalizing with text, they can develop a short summary, a verbal summary. It can be when you kind of retell the big picture. So if I'm talking about Bob having a new car, the big picture is that he's sitting in it, it's blue, and he's cruising down the street. It goes super fast because it's a new car. I leave certain details out, but if I'm asked about those specific details, I'll probably be able to identify them as well. Am I asked about those specific details? With my structural words. And then I highlighted also what skills are developed or helped or improved. And like I said, the oral expression, oral comprehension, reading comprehension, as well as inferential thinking, auditory comprehension, written language, it really helps with a lot of things, leads into the highlighting, and the highlighting also helps with all these skills that I've been mentioning. Step 6, it's how you do it with multiple sentences or an entire story. Again, helps with oral and reading comprehension. And then step 7 would be to take them to the highlighting. So what would they highlight? Things that were mentioned in the visualizing and verbalizing strategy or exercise, because those are the important things that you took and made a picture of. And then here you have the structure words again. So in short, let me go back to my max reading page. The visualizing and verbalizing strategy can be used with anything: pictures, words, sentences, stories. On max reading, we want for it to be done specifically, or especially, I should have said, especially on level 0, the books prep 1 and prep 2. And it is important that you tell your students, because I've been to many schools. I don't know if people that are on the training right now have had me personally in the schools, but when I go many times, when I see students that are on level 0 and working on these pictures, I see it happening all the time. They click on the picture, go to the questions right away. It is important that they know that they're supposed to do the visualizing and verbalizing. If you can't prompt them, if the parent cannot prompt them, just make sure that they have the words in front of them, and just give them a few examples. Maybe you want to make a Word document that says, okay, for when, these are the type of questions that you can ask yourself. When is it happening? Present, past, future. When is it the daylight? Is it nighttime? Or for where? Like, you can make examples of what type of questions they can think about so that they can prompt themselves if you can't or the parent can. But it is important that they do it, especially when there's just pictures, because that's the only exercise that they need to do in order to move on to the questions. And then when they get to text, they'll have the highlighting strategy, and they'll have questions and sometimes outlines and summaries. But it is important that they also take this strategy or the exercise along with them to those higher levels or to working with text, because again, having that picture in my head will make it that much easier for me to understand, retain, and recall information. So that when I move on to the reading comprehension, I can take the information from here, from my visual picture, from my mind. So that when I'm writing an outline or a summary, I'll take it from here. It is important and it is very beneficial, not only for pictures, but also for vocabulary, words, or for text. So a recap of where I got the information that I got, the handouts that I was scrolling through, the words. I went into the dashboard. I clicked on materials, went to max reading, and I'm actually going to reorganize these materials at some point, but the ones that you're going to be looking for are the ones that have to do with the visualizing and verbalizing. The one called general instructions is the one that I highlighted, this one. And the other one is just the structure words themselves. So you can download this and send this home for the students, or just give them the list and have them do index cards to prompt themselves. Remember, you don't have to use all of the words. You might start small with 2, 3, 5, and then expand. And not all of them are going to be applicable to what you're doing. So that's why you can skip some of them. So that's pretty much, I said it was going to be shorter. That's pretty much what I wanted to show you. Any questions about the visualizing and verbalizing? Like I said, it's pretty simple. It's just a matter of being aware of what it is, how to do it, and most importantly, that your students are aware that they need to do it, because that's greatly going to impact their scores, not only on Max Scholar, but it's greatly going to impact all of the skills that I mentioned: the oral comprehension, the reading comprehension, expression, writing. It really has to do with everything, because that thought process of words, images, writing, etc., it's a cycle that repeats itself constantly in our heads. And I see a question: where do we find the answers to the questions? There isn't a place, because you're visualizing and verbalizing based on what you see. You're going to ask different questions. You're going to post them differently. You're going to focus on different words or different prompts or different questions. So that's why it's important that if you can, that you are guiding the students so that you can feed into that back and forth of questions and answers. But there is no set answers, really. It's an exercise where you need to develop the answers. You need to come up with that picture in your head. Anything else? And yes, everyone that attended the training or even signed up for training, I will be sending the recording probably Monday, because it takes a while to convert and upload and all of that. So probably Monday, I'll be sending it out. All right, I'll let you guys go so you can start enjoying your weekend, hopefully. You can start from now. And I'll send you guys the recording on Monday. Remember, every file that I was going over is on the material section. And if you do think of some questions, just shoot me an email and we'll take it from there. Have a good weekend, guys. Stay safe. Bye.